The three human warships emerged from hyperspace like wounded beasts. Their hulls bore scorch marks and blast damage, telling stories of recent battle. In the vast chamber of the Galactic Council, conversations stopped. 12 alien species turned to watch the unexpected arrival. Captain John Miller stood on the bridge of the U.S. Liberty, gripping a console for support. His uniform was torn at the shoulder, and dried blood covered part of his face. Beside him, Commander Lisa Turner checked their position on the tactical display. Her own uniform showed signs of combat, with burns on her sleeves. "We're surrounded, Captain," Turner reported. 17 Council defense ships have locked onto us. Miller nodded slowly. "Open a channel to the Council. Tell them we're here to answer their summons." The main view screen flickered to life, showing the interior of the Council chamber. The massive room held representatives from the 12 senior species of the Galactic Council. Each sat in specially designed areas that matched their biological needs. Some breathed methane, others required high humidity, and a few existed in pressure suits. The Council speaker, a tall creature with silver scales and 4 arms, rose from its seat. "Human vessels, you have entered Council space without proper authorization. Your ships show signs of recent combat. Explain yourselves." Miller straightened his damaged uniform. "Honored Council, we received your message 3 days ago. We came as quickly as possible." The speaker's eyes narrowed. "Your ships appear to have been in battle. The Council demands an explanation for this violence." Before Miller could respond, another alien representative stood. This one resembled a giant mantis with blue exoskeleton. "Look at their ships. They're covered in blood and burns. These humans are exactly what we feared. Violent primitives who solve every problem with warfare." Miller's jaw tightened. "With respect, the damage to our ships has a purpose. We're here to report on the Korthik Empire and their activities in the Epsilon sector." A murmur ran through the chamber. The Korthak were known as a powerful but secretive species that controlled several systems in the outer regions. The speaker raised 2 of its 4 hands for silence. "The Council has no authority in the Epsilon sector. That region lies beyond our jurisdiction." "That's exactly why the Korthik chose it," Miller said. "They've been operating there for centuries, hidden from your view." Another representative, this one a gelatinous being that communicated through color changes, flashed an angry red. "Humans have been in space for barely 200 years. How dare you presume to know more about galactic affairs than species who have traveled the stars for millennia?" Miller took a deep breath. "Ambassador Rivera is aboard the U.S. Washington. He has a full report on what we discovered in the Epsilon sector. With your permission, he'll present our findings." The speaker consulted briefly with other council members. "Very well. Ambassador Rivera may address the Council. But be warned, if this is some human attempt to justify unauthorized military action, there will be consequences." The view screen split to show Ambassador Paul Rivera standing in a conference room aboard one of the other human ships. His dark suit was impeccable, but his face bore healing cuts and bruises. His left arm was in a medical support brace. "Honored representatives," Rivera began, his voice steady despite his injuries. 3 months ago, humanity made first contact with a new species in the Epsilon sector. What we discovered there changed everything we thought we knew about our galaxy." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We found slave ships. Massive prison vessels holding thousands of sentient beings from at least 30 different species. Some of these species aren't even in your databases. Others were species you've recorded as extinct." The chamber erupted in shocked voices. The speaker had to call for order several times before the noise subsided. Rivera continued, "The Korthik Empire has been running the largest slave trading operation in galactic history. They've been doing it for over 1,000 years, right under your noses. They target newly spacefaring species before they can make contact with the Council. They harvest entire populations, selling them to buyers in regions you don't monitor." The mantis-like alien stood again. "These are serious accusations. Where is your proof?" "Our proof?" Rivera said quietly, "is written in the blood on our ships. We didn't just discover this operation. We shut it down, and we paid for it with 2,000 human lives." The chamber fell completely silent. "Your ships are damaged because you chose to intervene," the speaker said slowly. "Yes," Rivera confirmed. "We chose to act when we discovered children in cages. We chose to fight when we saw families being torn apart. We chose to bleed when we found entire species being sold like cattle. And if given the choice again, we would make the same decision." The blood-stained ships suddenly carried a very different meaning. Ambassador Paul Rivera stepped forward to the center of the presentation platform. The medical brace on his arm clicked softly with each movement. Around him, the alien representatives watched with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. 3 months ago, Rivera began, Captain Amy Rodriguez led our first exploration fleet to the Epsilon sector. We were following standard first contact protocols, moving slowly, broadcasting peaceful intentions. He touched a control panel, and a holographic star map appeared above him. We detected unusual energy signatures near a planet we designated as Epsilon Prime. When we investigated, we found something that changed everything. The hologram shifted to show massive ships in orbit around a gray world. These vessels were different from any design in the Council's databases, long rectangular structures with rows of small windows. "These are Corthic prison ships," Rivera explained. "Each one holds up to 10,000 prisoners. We counted 40 of these ships in the Epsilon system alone." The Zentari delegate, a being with crystalline skin, leaned forward. "How did you determine these were prison ships and not colony vessels or cargo transports?" Rivera's expression hardened. "We intercepted their communications. We heard the screams." He pressed another button. The chamber filled with the sound of distress calls in dozens of alien languages. Some representatives covered their auditory organs. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "We recorded thousands of hours of these transmissions," Rivera continued after silencing the recording. "Beings crying for help in languages we'd never heard before. Children calling for parents who were already sold to different buyers." The four-armed speaker raised a hand. "Did you attempt diplomatic contact with the Corthic authorities?" "We did," Rivera replied. Captain Rodriguez sent a standard greeting message. The Corthic response was immediate. They opened fire. The hologram changed to show a tactical display of the first battle. 3 human ships faced 12 Corthic vessels. The Corthic commander, who identified himself as War Master Krell, sent us one message: "Leave now or become merchandise." The gelatinous representative pulsed with yellow light, indicating a question. "And yet you chose to stay and fight." "We chose to investigate further," Rivera corrected. "Our scanners had detected life signs on those prison ships, millions of them. We couldn't just leave." He brought up another image. Sensor readings showing the interior of a prison ship. Our science officer, Lieutenant Marcus Webb, managed to penetrate their shields long enough to get detailed scans. What we found was horrifying. The scan data resolved into a cross-section of the prison ship. Tiny dots representing life forms were packed into cramped cells stacked 20 levels high. Each cell held between 10 and 20 beings, Rivera explained. No sanitation. Minimal life support. The Corthic kept their merchandise in conditions that violated every principle of sentient rights. A representative from the Vraxian Confederation, a species that looked like upright bears with blue fur, growled softly. "How long has this been happening?" "According to the Corthic records we eventually captured, over 1,200 years, Rivera answered. "They'd been operating since before Earth developed spaceflight." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. The speaker had to call for order. "We've documented at least 60 different species in their prison ships," Rivera continued. 8 of those species were in your extinct database. They're not extinct. They're slaves." He brought up images of various alien beings and cells. The Corthic specifically target species that have just achieved interstellar travel but haven't made contact with the Galactic Council yet. They monitor emerging civilizations, Wait until they launch their first colony ships, then capture them. The Zentari delegate's crystalline features darkened. This is why we've had so few new members joining the Council in recent centuries. Exactly, Rivera confirmed. The Korthak have been systematically harvesting emerging civilizations before they can reach you. They sell them as slaves in regions beyond Council space, to mining operations, private armies, illegal research facilities. The mantis-like ambassador clicked his mandibles in distress. How many beings have they taken? Rivera's voice grew quiet. Based on their records, approximately 50 million over the centuries. Several representatives made sounds of horror in their native languages. But you said you shut down their operation. The speaker prompted. How? Your fleet was vastly outnumbered. Rivera straightened his shoulders. When we realized the scale of the horror, Captain Rodriguez made a decision. She sent a coded message back to Earth. Found hell. Send angels. The translator paused at the metaphor, then rendered it in terms each species could understand. Within 18 hours, every available human warship within range converged on the Epsilon sector. We assembled a fleet of 40 vessels, everything from battleships to converted merchant ships with weapons. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each representative. What happened next is why our ships are stained with blood. We went to war not for territory or resources, but for the freedom of millions who couldn't fight for themselves. The hologram shifted to show human ships advancing on the Korthak fleet. This is how the largest slave empire in galactic history met its end. Not gradually, not through diplomacy, but in fire and fury. Rivera touched his medical brace. And yes, we bear the scars. But we do it again without hesitation. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had done what the Council had failed to do for over a millennium. They had confronted evil and destroyed it, regardless of the cost to themselves. The holographic display shifted to show a human ship bridge from 3 months earlier. Captain Amy Rodriguez stood at the center, her black hair tied back, her eyes focused on the tactical display. Around her, the bridge crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. Status report. Rodriguez ordered, her voice calm despite the situation. Lieutenant Danny Park looked up from his sensor station. Captain, we're detecting massive life sign readings from those prison ships. The numbers keep climbing. Current count is over 2 million sentient beings. Rodriguez turned to her communications officer. Any response to our hails? Negative, Captain. The Korthak are maintaining radio silence after their initial threat. The hologram now showed the view from the ship's external cameras. The Korthak vessels had formed a defensive line between the human ships and the prison fleet. Their warships were twice the size of the human vessels, with heavy armor and weapons arrays. Captain, the tactical officer reported, the Korthak are powering up their weapons. They're targeting us. Rodriguez didn't hesitate. Send the emergency signal to Earth. Use the priority code. Message. Found hell. Send angels. Ambassador Rivera paused the recording. This was the moment Captain Rodriguez committed humanity to war. She had 3 ships against 12. By all military logic, she should have retreated. The Vraxian representative growled softly. Why didn't she wait for reinforcements? Rivera brought up another scan. Because of this, the display showed the prison ships beginning to move. The Korthak started evacuating. They were going to jump to hyperspace with their captives. Once they scattered across the galaxy, we'd never find them all. He resumed the recording. On the bridge, Rodriguez turned to her crew. Listen up, she said. Those prison ships hold millions of innocent beings. If we let them leave, those people will disappear forever into slavery. I won't let that happen on my watch. She looked at each crew member. I'm not ordering anyone to stay. This isn't our space. It's not our fight. Anyone who wants to leave can take the shuttles. No one moved. Lieutenant Park spoke up. Captain, with respect, shut up and give us targets. A ghost of a smile crossed Rodriguez's face. All right. Battle stations. We're going to buy time until help arrives. The recording showed the first human ship, the U.S. Discovery, accelerating toward the Korthak line. The alien warships opened fire, their energy weapons lighting up space. The Discovery took heavy damage in the first minute, Rivera narrated. But Rodriguez had a plan. She knew the Korthak wouldn't risk damaging their merchandise. The hologram showed the Discovery diving toward the prison ships, using them as cover. The Korthak weapons fell silent, unwilling to risk hitting their valuable cargo. For the next 18 hours, our 3 ships played a deadly game of cat and mouse, Rivera continued. They used the prison ships as shields, striking at the Korthak from unexpected angles. The recording switched to show the interior of the human ships. Damage control teams ran through smoke-filled corridors. In the medical bay, Dr. Helen Price worked on wounded crew members while the ship shook from impacts. "We lost the U.S. Pioneer in hour 6, Rivera said quietly. "All hands, 312 souls." The display showed the Pioneer breaking apart under concentrated fire from 4 Korthak ships. But even in its death throes, the ship managed to ram one of the enemy vessels. By hour 12, the Discovery and the Horizon were barely holding together, Rivera continued. But Rodriguez kept fighting. She knew help was coming. The recording showed Rodriguez on the bridge, her uniform scorched, a cut above her eye dripping blood. "Status?" she asked. "Shields at 15%, reported the engineering officer. "Hull breaches on decks 3 through 7. We've lost half our weapons. Life support. Failing. Maybe 2 hours left." Rodriguez nodded. "And the prison ships? Still in position. The Korthak can't move them without exposing them to our fire." "Then we're still winning." Rivera paused the recording again. "This is the kind of person Captain Rodriguez is. Her ship was dying. Her crew was wounded, and she called it winning because the slaves were still there to be rescued." The hologram shifted to show new contacts appearing on the edge of the system. 1, then 5, then 20, human ships dropping out of hyperspace. 18 hours after Rodriguez sent her message, the first wave of reinforcements arrived, Rivera explained. 40 ships from Earth and our colonies. Some were warships. Others were converted freighters with weapons welded to their hulls. Even private vessels answered the call. The recording showed the moment Rodriguez saw the reinforcements. For the first time, her composure cracked. She gripped the command chair and whispered, "Thank God." "The Korthak didn't expect this," Rivera said. "They couldn't understand why humans would risk everything for beings they'd never met. They were about to learn." The final image showed the human fleet forming up, their damaged scouts joining the fresh ships. 40 human vessels faced the Korthak battle line. "This was the beginning of the Battle of Epsilon Prime," Rivera concluded, "the largest engagement in human military history. And we fought it not for conquest or glory, but because Captain Rodriguez refused to let 2 million souls disappear into darkness." He looked around the chamber. The next 72 hours would determine the fate of an empire built on suffering. The Battle of Epsilon Prime began at dawn, ship time. 40 human vessels faced 60 Korthak warships in the largest space battle humanity had ever fought. The odds were not in their favor. Admiral George Coleman commanded the fleet from the battleship U.S. Texas. He was 60 years old, a veteran of the Mars Rebellion, and he had never expected to fight aliens over slave ships. "All ships, this is Coleman," he broadcast. "We're here to free those prisoners. Whatever it takes. Whatever it costs." The Korthak commander appeared on the main screen. War Master Krell was a massive creature with gray scales and 4 arms, each holding a different weapon. "Humans," Krell sneered. "You dare interfere with Korthak business. We have harvested the weak for centuries. You are nothing but newcomers to space." Coleman didn't blink. "Then let me teach you something about newcomers. We learn fast." The first phase of the battle was chaos. Energy beams and missiles filled space between the 2 fleets. The Korthak had superior firepower, but the humans had something else: creativity. Lieutenant Chris Baker led the fighter squadrons from his cockpit. "Remember your training," he told his pilots. "The Korthak fight in formation. They're predictable. We're not." The human fighters didn't engage in traditional dogfights. Instead, they used hit-and-run tactics, striking at weak points and fleeing before the Korthak could respond. They targeted weapon arrays, engine systems, and shield generators. On the U.S. Liberty, Tactical Officer Susan Martinez noticed something. "Admiral, the Korthak ships all use the same shield frequency. If we can match it, we can slip through," Coleman finished. "Transmit that data to all ships." Within minutes, human weapons began penetrating Korthak shields. The alien warships, which had seemed invincible, started taking real damage. Meanwhile, on the medical ship U.S. Hope, Dr. Karen White prepared for casualties. "Set up triage stations," she ordered her staff. "We're going to have wounded from both our ships and the prisoners." The battle raged for 6 hours. The human fleet lost 12 ships in that time, but they destroyed 20 Korthak vessels. The aliens had never faced an enemy willing to sacrifice so much. Then came the turning point. Captain Rodriguez, still commanding the damaged Discovery, noticed something about the prison ships. "Admiral," she called, "the prison ships have automated systems. If we can hack them, we can turn them," Coleman realized. "Get me our best computer specialists." Lieutenant Mike Chen led a team of hackers in a digital assault on the prison ship systems. While the fleets exchanged fire, they worked to break Korthak encryption. "Got it," Chen shouted after 2 hours of work. "We have control of prison ship 7. Coleman smiled grimly. "Turn its engines against the Korthak fleet." The massive prison ship, 10 times the size of any warship, slowly rotated. Its engines fired, driving it toward the Korthak battle line. The aliens had to scatter to avoid collision. "Do it again," Coleman ordered. "Use their own ships against them." One by one, the human hackers took control of the prison ships. The Korthak found themselves fighting on 2 fronts, the human fleet and their own captured vessels. War Master Krell appeared on screen again, his scales now cracked and bleeding. "You destroy yourselves for strangers." "Why?" Coleman's response was simple. "Because it's right." The Korthak couldn't understand this logic. Their entire society was built on exploiting the weak. The concept of sacrificing for others was alien to them. As the battle entered its 10th hour, something unexpected happened. The doors of prison ship 12 opened, and small vessels emerged. These were not Korthak ships. "Admiral," Communications Officer Janet Foster reported, "we're receiving signals from those ships. They're some of the prisoners. They've overpowered their guards and are joining the fight." The liberated aliens had armed themselves with stolen Korthak weapons. They were few in number, but their courage inspired the human fleet. "All ships," Coleman broadcast. "We're not alone anymore. Press the attack." The combined fleet, humans, and freed aliens, struck the Korthak line with renewed energy. The slavers, used to victims who couldn't fight back, began to break. By hour 15, the Korthak fleet was in retreat. 30 of their ships were destroyed, and the rest were fleeing toward hyperspace. "Should we pursue?" asked Commander Turner. Coleman shook his head. "Our priority is the prisoners. Begin rescue operations." As Korthak vessels vanished into hyperspace, human ships moved toward the prison fleet. The largest rescue operation in galactic history was about to begin. On the bridge of the Texas, Coleman looked at the casualty reports. 2,000 humans dead, 14 ships lost, but they had saved millions. "Signal all ships," he said quietly. "Well done." The Battle of Epsilon Prime was over. But the real work, evacuating millions of prisoners while securing evidence of Korthak crimes, was just beginning. It would take 3 days and every transport humanity could muster. But they had won. David had beaten Goliath, not with a stone, but with courage and sacrifice. The rescue operation began immediately after the battle. Commander Steve Johnson led the first boarding team onto Prison Ship 7. The assault shuttle docked with a heavy clang, and 12 Marines in full armor stepped into the alien vessel. "Keep your weapons ready," Johnson ordered. Some guards might still be alive. The corridors were dark and smelled of fear and desperation. Emergency lights flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls. The team moved carefully, checking each corner. They found the first cells after walking just 50 meters. Behind thick, transparent barriers, dozens of alien beings huddled together. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few seemed to be made of living crystal. "Open it," Johnson ordered Private Maria Garcia, their tech specialist. Garcia worked on the control panel for several minutes before the barrier finally dissolved. The prisoners shrank back, terrified. Johnson removed his helmet, showing his human face. "We're here to help. The Korthak are gone. You're free." An elderly alien with purple skin and large eyes stepped forward. Through the translator, his words came through. "Free? What is free?" "It means you can go home," Johnson said softly. The old alien began to weep. Soon others joined him, their various forms of crying creating a strange symphony of relief. The rescue teams spread throughout the prison ships. Each team had specific orders: free the prisoners, provide medical care, and document everything for evidence. On Prison Ship 12, Lieutenant Sarah Webb found something that made her blood run cold. A section marked Processing Center held thousands of children from various species. "Command, we need medical teams in Ship 12 immediately," she called. We've found the children. The young ones had been separated from their families, tagged with numbers, and prepared for sale. Some were so young they couldn't speak yet. Private Tommy Harris, a tough Marine who had fought in 3 wars, sat on the floor and gently cradled an alien child who looked like a small bear with green fur. "It's okay, little one," he whispered. "No one's going to hurt you anymore." As the rescue continued, the humans discovered the true scale of the Korthak operation. Prison Ship 20 contained detailed records of their slave trade going back centuries. Admiral Coleman reported Intelligence Officer Rita Patel, "We've found their complete database. Every sale, every capture, every world they've harvested. It's all here." The records showed the Korthak had been taking beings from at least 60 different species. They had destroyed entire civilizations, always careful to strike before the victims could reach the Galactic Council. On the medical ship U.S. Hope, Dr. Karen White worked 18 hours straight treating rescued prisoners. The conditions on the slave ships had been horrific. Malnutrition, disease, and untreated injuries were common. "Doctor," called Nurse David Kim, "we have a problem. This patient's biology. We don't know how to treat it." White looked at the patient, a being made of what appeared to be living metal. "Contact the freed prisoners. Ask if any of them are the same species." Soon, aliens who had been slaves were helping treat their fellow prisoners. They shared knowledge about their biology, their medicines, their needs. By the second day, a remarkable thing was happening. Former slaves were organizing themselves, helping with the rescue operations. They guided human teams to hidden cells, translated for species without translator compatibility, and comforted the traumatized. Commander Johnson found himself working alongside a 4-armed alien named Velak. "Why do your people do this?" Velak asked. "You lost many ships, many lives. You didn't know us. Why fight for strangers?" Johnson thought for a moment. "On Earth, we have a saying, evil succeeds when good people do nothing. We couldn't do nothing." The rescue operation took 3 full days. Human ships ferried group after group of freed beings to the planet below, where a temporary camp had been established. Military engineers worked around the clock to build shelters, medical facilities, and food distribution centers. By the end of the 3rd day, they had rescued 2.3 million beings. But the work was just beginning. "We need to find their homeworlds," Admiral Coleman told his staff. "Some of these species have been enslaved for generations. They might not even know where home is." Using the Korthak records, human xenologists and historians began the massive task of identifying home planets and contacting surviving civilizations. Some discoveries were heartbreaking. The Korthak had completely destroyed several worlds, leaving the rescued beings with nowhere to return. For these refugees, humanity would need to find new homes. On the fourth day, as the last prisoners were being evacuated, Commander Johnson made a final sweep of Prison Ship 7. In a hidden compartment, he found something that made his blood run cold. A star chart showing dozens of other systems where the Korthak operated slave facilities. "Admiral," he reported, "this isn't over. Epsilon Prime was just one hub. There are more. Many more." Coleman's response was immediate. "Then we have more work to do. Prepare the fleet." The rescued aliens, learning of more of their kind still in captivity, began volunteering to join the fight. The liberation of Epsilon Prime had lit a spark. Former slaves wanted to become liberators. "Let them join us," Coleman decided. "This isn't just humanity's fight anymore." As news of the discovery spread through the temporary camps below, a new alliance was forming. Humans and 60 other species, united by a common cause, to end slavery in the galaxy forever. The blood-stained ships of humanity had started something that could not be stopped. Ambassador Paul Rivera now stood in the present, facing the Galactic Council. The holographic displays showed the aftermath of the rescue operation: damaged human ships, exhausted crews, and millions of free beings beginning new lives. "We present to this council the evidence of Korthak crimes," Rivera said. 2,300,000 beings enslaved. Records of sales spanning 12 centuries. Proof of 47 civilizations destroyed before they could join you. He activated another display. It showed testimony from rescued beings, each telling their story of capture and enslavement. The chamber remained deadly quiet as voice after voice spoke of families torn apart, worlds ransacked, and generations born in captivity. "The Galactic Council claims to represent order and justice in our galaxy," Rivera continued. "Yet this atrocity happened in your shadow. The Korthak used your borders as shields, knowing you wouldn't look beyond your jurisdiction." The Zentari delegate finally spoke. "These crimes occurred outside Council space. We had no authority." "You had no interest," Rivera interrupted. "For 1,200 years, species have been vanishing from the galaxy. Did none of you wonder why? Did you never question why so few new civilizations reached you?" The four-armed speaker shifted uncomfortably. "The Council cannot police the entire galaxy. Our resources are limited." "Our resources were limited too," Rivera replied. "We've been in space for 2 centuries. You've been here for millennia. Yet we acted while you debated jurisdiction." He brought up an image of Captain Amy Rodriguez, her face still showing the cuts and bruises from the battle. This officer led 3 ships against a Korthak battle fleet. She held them for 18 hours to prevent millions of beings from disappearing forever. She knew she would probably die. She stayed anyway. The Vraxian representative leaned forward. "Your people paid a heavy price. 2,000 dead. Why did they fight so hard for strangers?" Rivera paused before answering. "On Earth, we have a history filled with slavery and liberation. We've seen what happens when people decide that some lives matter less than others. We swore never again, and we meant it for everyone, not just ourselves." A murmur ran through the chamber. The translator systems worked to convey concepts that some species had never considered. Rivera activated another display. "But this isn't just about the past. The Korthak Empire still exists. We found evidence of slave operations in 17 other systems. Millions more beings are still in chains." The mantis-like ambassador clicked his mandibles. "Surely now that their main hub is destroyed, the Korthak will cease these operations." "No," Rivera said firmly. "They'll rebuild. They'll hide deeper. They'll continue unless someone stops them permanently." He straightened his damaged jacket. "Humanity requests official sanction to continue liberation operations. We're prepared to lead a coalition force against all remaining Korthek slave facilities. The chamber erupted in debate. Several species argued about jurisdiction, others about the cost. The speaker called for order. This is a dangerous precedent. The gelatinous representative pulsed. Authorizing military action beyond council space could lead to chaos. Chaos. Rivera's voice hardened. There are children in cages right now. Families being torn apart. Entire species being erased. That's not chaos. That's evil. And it demands action. He gestured to his injured arm. Every human in our fleet bears scars from Epsilon Prime. Our ships still carry the marks of that battle. But look at what we accomplished. 2.3 million free beings now have a chance at life. The Zentari delegate stood. And what of the Korthek? Do they not deserve consideration as a sovereign species? Sovereignty ends where slavery begins, Rivera shot back. The Korthek made their choice. They built an empire on the suffering of others. Now they face the consequences. He activated a final display showing human and alien volunteers working together in the refugee camps. Former slaves helping to maintain the ships that would hunt their former masters. This is no longer just humanity's fight, Rivera said. 60 species now stand with us. Former slaves who want to ensure no one else suffers as they did. We will go to every system on that Korthek star chart. We will free every prisoner. We will end this evil forever. The speaker consulted with other council members through private channels. Finally, he turned back to Rivera. The council will vote on your request. But first, we must ask, if we refuse authorization, what will humanity do? Rivera didn't hesitate. We'll go anyway. We didn't come here for permission. We came to inform you of our intentions and invite you to join us. Shocked silence filled the chamber. You're right that this sets a precedent, Rivera continued. The precedent is this. When faced with absolute evil, the civilized beings of this galaxy will act, with or without bureaucratic approval. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each representative. The question isn't what humanity will do. We've already shown you. The question is, will the Galactic Council stand with us, or will you continue to hide behind your borders while millions suffer? The fate of the galaxy hung on their answer. The Galactic Council chamber fell into tense silence after Rivera's challenge. Then, unexpectedly, a new voice spoke from the viewing gallery above. May I address the council? All eyes turned upward. A being with silver feathers and 4 wings floated down to the main floor. The speaker hesitated, then nodded. I am Kriva of the Skylarian people. The newcomer said. We were thought extinct for 800 years. Yesterday, I stood on free soil for the first time in my life. The delegates shifted in their seats as Kriva continued. I was born on prison ship 9. My parents were born there too. For 20 generations, my people lived in cages. We forgot what clouds looked like. We forgot the taste of rain. Her wings trembled slightly. When the humans came, we thought it was another transfer, another sale. Instead, they opened our cages and asked nothing in return. They gave us food, medicine, and something we'd forgotten existed, hope. More voices joined from the gallery. Other rescued beings had come to speak. I am Zeth of the Morvani, said a crystalline being. The Korthek took my world when we launched our first starship. That was 50 years ago. The council never knew we existed. I am Threll, announced a creature covered in blue scales. My species reached space 90 years ago. The Korthek were waiting. They captured our colony ships before we could broadcast our first message to the galaxy. One by one, survivors stepped forward. Each story was different, yet the same. Civilizations destroyed before they could join the galactic community, entire species enslaved for generations. The Zentari delegate interrupted. These testimonies are moving, but we must follow proper procedure. The council needs time to investigate. Time. Kriva's feathers bristled. How much more time do you need? Another 1,000 years, another 1,000,000 slaves. Ambassador Rivera raised his hand for quiet. "We have a formal request before the Council. Will you authorize coalition action against the remaining Korthek slave operations?" The Speaker called for the vote. All in favor of granting humanity military authority in the Outer Territories. One by one, delegates activated their voting panels. The Vraxian voted yes immediately. The mantis-like species followed. Soon, green lights appeared across the chamber. But not all. The Zentari voted no. So did 3 other species known for their strict interpretation of council law. The final tally appeared. 8 in favor, 4 against. "The motion passes by majority," the Speaker announced. However, such action requires a 2/3 majority for full council support. Rivera's face hardened. "So you'll do nothing?" "Not nothing," said the Vraxian delegate, standing. "The Vraxian Confederation will join your coalition. We cannot speak for the Council, but we can speak for ourselves." "As will the Threnodi," added another delegate. "We have warriors ready to deploy." More species began to declare their support. Even without full Council approval, a coalition was forming. Then something unprecedented happened. The Korthek ambassador, who had remained silent throughout the session, stood. His gray scales had lost their shine, and his 4 arms hung limply. "I invoke the right of challenge," he declared. "The Korthek Empire demands trial by combat. Your champion against ours. If we win, you cease all operations against us." The chamber exploded in outrage. Trial by combat was an ancient rite, rarely used in modern times. Rivera smiled coldly. "We accept." "I will face your champion," the Korthak continued. "Choose your warrior." "I already have," Rivera said. He pressed a button on his communication device. "Captain Rodriguez, please join us." The main doors opened. Amy Rodriguez entered, still wearing her battle-damaged uniform. She walked with a slight limp, her face showing healing scars from Epsilon Prime. The Korthek ambassador laughed. "This small human. She can barely walk." Rodriguez stopped in the center of the chamber. "I can walk well enough. Name your terms." "Personal weapons only." "To the death." "No," Rodriguez said. Everyone looked surprised. "Not to the death. To surrender. I want you alive to stand trial for your crimes." The Korthak snarled. "You dare show mercy." "It's not mercy," Rodriguez replied. "It's justice, something you've denied millions." The Speaker raised his hands. "This is highly irregular." "So is slavery," Rivera interrupted. "Let them fight." A circular space was cleared in the chamber. Ancient protocols were activated, creating an energy barrier around the combat area. Rodriguez checked her sidearm while the Korthek ambassador selected 4 weapons, 1 for each hand. The contrast was stark. A wounded human woman against a 2-meter-tall alien warrior. "Begin," the Speaker commanded. The Korthek charged immediately, all 4 weapons swinging. Rodriguez didn't try to match his strength. Instead, she moved like water, flowing around his attacks. "You're weak," the Korthak taunted. "Like all your species." Rodriguez didn't respond. She watched, learned, and waited, just as she had at Epsilon Prime. The fight continued, but something was becoming clear. The Korthak was used to victims who couldn't fight back. Rodriguez had spent 18 hours fighting against impossible odds. She knew how to survive. He only knew how to dominate. The end came suddenly. As the Korthak overextended in a wild swing, Rodriguez stepped inside his reach and pressed her weapon against his throat. "Yield," she said quietly. The Korthak's eyes widened. In his culture, capture meant enslavement. He expected the same fate. "Yield," Rodriguez repeated. "Face justice. Let the galaxy judge your crimes." Slowly, the Korthak's weapons clattered to the floor. "I yield." The chamber erupted in chaos. No one had expected this outcome. Rodriguez stepped back, holstering her weapon. "The challenge is decided," the Speaker announced, clearly shaken. "The coalition has won the right to proceed." But everyone knew something larger had happened. Humanity hadn't just won a fight. They had changed the rules of the game forever. The aftermath of the combat trial changed everything. As the defeated Korthek ambassador was led away to face justice, the Galactic Council found itself at a crossroads. The other delegates watched in stunned silence as more freed slaves entered the chamber to bear witness. Ambassador Rivera stood before the council one final time. The vote may not have given us unanimous support, but we have our coalition. 12 species have already pledged ships and soldiers to our cause. The speaker nodded slowly. What are your intentions now? We leave immediately, Rivera replied. Every hour we debate, more beings suffer in chains. Our fleet will depart for the first target on the Korthek star charts within the day. The Zentari delegate, who had voted against the action, stood. Wait. The chamber fell silent. The Zentari Republic wishes to reconsider its position. We will join your coalition. One by one, the remaining holdout species changed their stance. Faced with the testimony of the freed slaves and the determination of the humans, even the most conservative delegates could no longer justify inaction. It seems, the speaker said quietly, that humanity has taught the council a lesson about courage. Rivera nodded. Courage is contagious. It spreads when good beings see others standing up to evil. Outside the council chambers, preparations were already underway. The human fleet, still bearing its battle scars, was being refitted and resupplied. But now they were not alone. Ships from a dozen different species were joining them. Captain Rodriguez met with her fellow commanders on the bridge of the U.S. Discovery. The ship still showed damage from Epsilon Prime, but her crew had refused to transfer to a newer vessel. Our first target is the Korthek operation in the Gamma Serpentis system, she announced. Intelligence suggests they're holding over 1 million captives there. A Vraxian admiral growled his approval. My warriors are ready. We owe a debt to those who fought alone at Epsilon Prime. This won't be like Epsilon Prime, Rodriguez warned. The Korthek know we're coming now. They'll be prepared. Othronodi captain, her feathers rustling, spoke up. Then we must be more prepared. My people contribute our stealth technology. Their sensors won't see us coming. As the fleet prepared to depart, something remarkable happened in the space around the council station. Civilian ships began arriving. Merchants, explorers, even private yachts from various species. They came not to fight, but to help with the humanitarian crisis that would follow each liberation. On Earth, factories that had been producing consumer goods switched to making emergency shelters and medical supplies. Universities opened their databases to help identify the home worlds of rescued species. The entire human civilization mobilized for what they now called the Liberation War. Back in the council chambers, Ambassador Rivera was preparing to leave when the speaker approached him privately. I must ask, the elderly alien said. Your people have been in space for such a short time. Yet you've changed our galaxy forever. How? Rivera thought for a moment. Perhaps it's because we're newcomers. We haven't been here long enough to accept that things can't change. We still believe the impossible is possible. And the blood on your ships will wash away, Rivera replied. But the freedom those people now have, that's permanent. As the combined fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, Captain Rodriguez addressed all ships. Her words were transmitted across the coalition. We go now to face an evil that has hidden in darkness for over 1,000 years. We go not as conquerors, but as liberators. We go not for glory, but for justice. And we go together, as one galaxy, united in purpose. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind a galactic council that would never be the same. The blood-stained ships of humanity had indeed brought change, but not through violence alone. They had reminded an ancient civilization of its own forgotten principles. In the years that followed, children across the galaxy would learn about this day. They would hear how a young species, barely able to leave their own star system, had looked at the galaxy and asked a simple question. Why does no one help them? And then, instead of waiting for an answer, they acted. The Liberation War would continue for 3 more years. Every Korthak slave facility would be found and dismantled. Millions more beings would be freed. The coalition grew to include 40 species, with humans and former slaves leading the way. But it all began with that day when humanity arrived at the Galactic Council with blood-stained ships. Not as a threat or a boast, but as proof that some principles are worth bleeding for. The old order of the galaxy, where the strong preyed on the weak beyond the borders of civilization, ended that day. A new age began, where the cry of the oppressed would always find an answer. And at the heart of it all was a simple human truth: evil thrives when good beings do nothing. Humanity chose to do something the galaxy would never forget.